to you for being here. I know I'm late. It's supposed to be at 9:30, but I had another live stream I just came back from. For those of you guys who came from that live stream, shout out to you. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, you guys know this from the last live stream and this live stream. We're gonna be a little bit more serious. Okay, so if you don't know what live stream I'm talking about, okay, I'm gonna put the link in the description. It's called Duke the Don, and we talk about red pill manosphere stuff. But over here, we like to keep it serious. Talk about the nonsense going on in this world because there is sure a lot of it. All right, and who knows, it might even get crazier. So, guys, as we go ahead and get started, please make sure to help this channel grow by hitting the like button, subscribe button if you like the show, and help us get all the way to where we need to go. All right, so what y'all already saw the title, you already saw the thumbnail. We got to talk about Nordstream, okay? So, guys, okay, it's no big secret. Well, I mean, it has been a big secret that everyone knew, but no one wanted to say, right? For a very, very long time, by long time, I mean since this war started, the pipeline blew up, and when that happened, no one really knew what was going on, right? Everyone speculated, maybe it might be Russia, right? Because Russia, I mean, we're at war with Ukraine, and they have all the incentive to blow up the pipeline because they're the evil bad guys. We have to, more reason why we have to go after them, right? Look, Europe, Russia, look what they did to you. They blew up the pipeline. That's weird, right? So for a long time, mainstream media entities and other politicians in the West ran off with this idea that Russia was somehow responsible for the Nord Stream pipeline explosion, right? The mysterious explosion that went down. And part of the reason that Russia was blamed was because, well, part of what the guys who were tasked to investigate this, part of their explanation was, well, Russia had is the only other country that has the military capacity to be able to handle such a operation, right? And going off of that explanation, if you really look at it, right, if you're just a basic propaganda guzzling fool, right, you would say, yeah, I can see how that makes sense, right? Oh, yeah, the Russians, of course, they have every incentive in the book. It's a war. They want to cripple Europe. They want to destroy German economy, right? Because Germany, and Germany especially, is the main one that relies on Russian crude oil exports. And then for the smart people who aren't so stupid, right? And when we really just think and do our research, we start to say, well, wait a minute, something's not right, America or collective West. Why would Russia blow up the pipeline when it can just simply turn it off? And some of you are thinking, like, what do you mean turn it off? Yeah, no. They're the ones who supply crude oil to these nations, these European countries. So if they control the flow of the pipeline and the crude oil to where it goes, why wouldn't they just turn it off? And once you start with this line of thinking, the rational, logical line of thinking, then other thought processes start to come into play. Like, well, okay, well, who stands to benefit from it, right? And if Russia already had the off switch at their disposal this entire time, well, then what other country with the military capacity and the intelligence capacity to be able to carry out such a mission, right? And then if you were smart enough, it starts to draw you towards certain conclusions, right? Conclusions of maybe it might not be Russia. It might actually be a Western nation, right? But what Western nation would be capable of crippling crude oil export from Russia? Could it be could it be Germany? Whoa, wait. Germany's economy overwhelmingly depends on Russian crude oil. Could it be the UK? No, they kind of buy from them too. Matter of fact, a lot of countries in collective Europe, when you start looking at oil exports, you start to realize that Russia actually supplies a good majority of them, and they do it for dirt cheap compared to the West. Okay, let's go ahead and do a little bit more digging, right? So now the pipeline completely blew up. We have to find out a new source of getting new oil because our people are gonna freeze in the wintertime if we don't get them the energy they need. Well, in comes liquefied natural gas. All right. Now, here's the thing. It's been pitched to a lot of Western nations as the next future of gas, energy, and all that stuff, right? Although, even though it's more expensive to basically implement, and not only that, it's actually a lot harder for a lot of countries to start using or processing liquefied natural gas because a lot of those countries, including Western countries, don't even have the infrastructure to go ahead and benefit from liquefied natural gas. At least not manufacturing, but the processing of it, right? All except for one country, one major country, the United States. All right, and that's the conclusion a lot of people who were based they came to. They're like, well, I mean, who else stands to gain but the U.S., right? Because it totally makes sense. If we blow up the pipeline, right, then guess what? Russia doesn't have a control of the off and on button of that pipeline no more. We take the leverage from Russia, but not only that, we take the leverage away from the rest of collective Europe because the reason why because now they're no longer dependent on Russia crude exports. That's right. Now we get to decouple them from the Eastern Bloc and move them closer to the Western Bloc, where we are, right? Although the caveat is they have to pay more for expensive source of energy, right? And if you were around and you had that same thought process, right, the mainstream media will consider you a conspiracy theorist, right? You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a Putin puppet, right? You're a commie propagandist is what they're probably going to label you as. Even though Russia is not really communist anymore, they're more capitalist than most other nations out here nowadays. So they will call you every name in the freaking book, right? That was until a guy named Seymour Hersh came out recently, right? And he came out with one of the probably most important report that will, like history will look back on this day as a very, very important point in history where we, a Western media source, kind of, basically admitted, at least the first one to admit, that U.S. had a big, big, big involvement with that Nordstream pipeline explosion. Now, here's the crazy thing. The reason why this is so shocking, it's shocking for multiple different reasons. Okay. And there are two main ones that we can cover. One of the main ones is this was the first outlet that you could say may be affiliated with Western sources because we know Western media is all propaganda, but this is the first main outlet that basically came out and said, yo, are we kidding ourselves here? Are we Sweden? What the fuck are you doing, right? Germany, what are you doing? Are we gonna sit here and pretend that we don't know the big giant elephant in the room that obviously has the power and the resources to carry something like this out? Are we all just gonna sit here and just ignore the fact that the biggest bull in the China shop is innocent? No. Of course, the United States is responsible, and here is why. And Seymour Hersh basically broke the article, and this was recent, right? He broke that article, and it caught fire. It caught big fire. Matter of fact, it's big fire in the underground space, kind of like where we're at right now, right? Because anyone who tells the truth, the mainstream media, all right, they'll come after you. See, it's not just us telling the truth in the manosphere space or in the red pill spaces or some of these other spaces, right? It's telling the truth in general, making sure people are understanding what not only their countries are up to, but what the government is doing out there in the world on their people's behalf. And not only that, how they're spending their hard-earned tax dollars. This is why we tell the truth, not just in those small cases, but in big cases where it has big repercussions for men across the world. So this guy basically came out and said, yo, we're responsible. The rest of the collective Western media did what they can to try to shut him up. They pulled his article, they shut him down from social media. They did every single thing they could to discredit and get everyone to not pay attention to this big, obvious story. And now it's starting to pick up fire because a lot of people are now starting to cover Seymour Hersh's article, and they're saying, hey, you know what? This actually starting to make a lot of sense. Most mainstream articles now platforms, they're coming out and writing articles about this and saying, hey, is he right? Is he wrong? Did the U.S. have an involvement in the Nord Stream 2 pipeline? What's going on, right? And I mentioned the first reason why this was a major issue. But here's a second, potentially more dangerous reason why the U.S. and collective West, at least the people who were involved in the Nord Stream pipeline mission, right? Why they don't want anyone else to know about this? The reason why they want to discredit this as much as they can is because if it's confirmed that a NATO ally, the biggest NATO ally, was responsible for sabotaging the economies of their own partners, their own allies, do you know how much of a big reputation disaster, PR disaster that can be? Maybe not in the immediate sense, but in the long-term sense. Do you know how much of damage that will do to United States reputation? Quite a lot, right? And now, what do you mean not necessarily short term, right? Because you guys be looking at me like, Duke, what do you mean? If I found out that my own ally caused the economic destruction of my own country. I mean, look at the UK. There are people protesting left and right. Look at France. People protesting left and right. Germany, holy shit. They got it worst off because Germany was closely tied to Russia than most other European countries. So now Germany, they got protests left and right. Olaf Scholz, he feels like he's isolated, okay? Because his own people pressured him to go ahead and toss tanks into Ukraine. And now he made a commitment that he didn't really want to do, but now he's forced to do it. And his buddies, Russia, are going to remember that. Oh, the Russians? They're going to remember that. How can you not remember that? When was the last time we saw German tanks in Ukraine fighting Russians? Can you all ever think of a time in an era in our history, help me find it, where German tanks fought Russians in Ukraine? Can y'all help me find it? Because then I'm sure if you find it, you'll understand why the Russians will look at this and they will never forget this. So Germany just put themselves in a hard spot. Now they got protests up the wahoo. And come to find out, your biggest ally was the one responsible for the destruction of that pipeline. Now, even if you wanted to take a step back and say, "Hey, Russia, maybe we maybe we overstepped, right? My economy is collapsing right now. We really need the help." You can't even go back now, all because of your own ally. They were responsible for shutting you out. Now, the immediate governments, like I stated before, are not going to really do too much with this news. Matter of fact, they're going to actively work with the West, and by the West, I mean the United States, to try to suppress this news as much as possible. But as we get further away from this war, as the grandchildren or children start to really realize the pain that a lot of the Western countries have put them through, this will go and destroy our reputation and our standing that we have across the world. Matter of fact, this will help dethrone our status as the world sole global power. Because not only did we just prove that our words can't be trusted, but we're actively willing to fuck over our own allies for our self-interest. And that's why this news is such a big deal. So let's go ahead and take a look at this article from Seymour Hersh's Substack. And guys, please do me a favor and like the video. And how he explains the Nord Stream explosion. All right. So let me know if you guys can see this. Seymour Hersh, how America took out the Nord Stream pipeline. Now, mind you, this is truth we all knew, but no one wanted to say until he said it. The New York Times called it a mystery, but the United States executed a covert sea operation that was kept secret until now. The U.S. Navy diving and salvage. The U.S. Navy's diving and salvage center can be found in a location as obscure as its name, down what was once a country lane in rural Panama City. Now a booming resort city in southwestern panhandle of Florida, 70 miles south of Alabama border, the center complex is as nondescript as its location. A drab concrete post World War II structure that has a look of a vocational high school on the west side of Chicago. A coin-operated laundromat and a dance school are across what is now a 4-lane road. The center has been training highly skilled deep water drivers for decades who once assigned to America's military units worldwide are capable of technical diving to do the good using C4 explosives to clear the harbors and breaches of debris and unexpected explosive ordnance. So what this is basically saying is this is like we actually own an academy that trains a lot of specialized divers to blow shit up. That's basically what they're saying. Last June, the Navy divers operating under the cover of a widely publicized and midsummer NATO exercise known as the Boltops 22 planted the remotely triggered explosive that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nordstream pipelines, according to a source with direct knowledge of operational planning. This is huge. Guys, this is huge. A U.S. based training academy for combat divers that deal with explosives were conducting a training exercise near the Nord Stream pipelines. And then months later, after said training exercises, pipelines go boom. And we want to talk about there's no coincidence with that at all. This is huge news. So I'm wondering, for those of you guys who listen to mainstream media for the most part, why isn't this out there right now? Why isn't MSNBC talking about this? Why isn't Fox News talking about this? Some of y'all will come up here and say, well, you know, the left is completely lost their mind. I mean, Joe Biden, this is Biden's war, okay? This is Biden's war, okay? So the Republicans were saints compared to this shit. No. That's not how that works, okay? Why isn't anyone covering this? Where are the conservatives? Where is everybody on this news? This goes to show you what I've been telling you guys for the longest time. This is the biggest con the American government has ever played on the American people, that we have 2 parties. The idea of us having 2 parties. Can you believe that? We don't live in a 2-party state. We live in a 1-party government with the illusions of 2 parties. You understand that? And this Ukrainian war, this Russo-Ukrainian war has done nothing but fed the idea to us that we don't live in a democracy. Matter of fact, our government resembles how China operates, just on a discounted scale. But we're headed in that direction. We are living a 1-party state, and the bickering between the left and the right is just theater. Just like this war, it's all theater to convince you have more options than you actually do. So when us conspiracy theories come out here and say, hey, our government is increasingly authoritarian. Our government is increasingly fascist. All right. They're not dealing with the will of the people. They're dealing with the will of the few. Y'all will call us conspiracy theories and crazy hat people, right? But here it is. 2 of the pipelines, which were known collectively as Nord Stream 1, had been providing Germany and much of Western Europe with cheap Russian natural gas for more than a decade. A second pair of pipelines called the Nord Stream 2 had been built, but were not yet operational. Now, with the Russian troops massing on the Ukrainian border and the bloodiest war in Europe since 1945 looming, President Joseph Biden saw the pipelines as a vehicle for Vladimir Putin to weaponize natural gas for his political and territorial ambition. This paragraph is also very important because there were multiple videos out there. You guys can research this too. Her name is Victoria Nuland. She's also part of the Ukrainian war operation. All right. She's working under Anthony Blinken, who is the Secretary of State. And they're all together on this Ukrainian Biden war, okay? Don't get it twisted. The mainstream media isn't going to call it this, but y'all heard it here first on this platform. This is Biden's war, just like Iraq was Bush's war, okay? You can kind of say Syria was Obama's war too, you know, Libya, Syria, all that mess, because we're still dealing with that shit. Every single president that we've had thus far has had their own war, and this is Biden's war, okay? I'm sure if the next president comes in town, they'll have their own war too. It's coming, okay? But Biden's war Victoria Nuland was one of the individuals that basically came out and talked about how we need to take out Nordstream 2 pipeline, or not Nordstream 2, the Nord Stream pipelines, right? They're saying if Russia doesn't behave, all right, if you guys don't behave, we're going to take out the pipelines. And years later, all of a sudden, war broke out in Europe and the pipelines were taken out. You see, the crazy thing about the West is we have a weird tick where we like to announce the things that we're going to do before we do it. Y'all ever notice that? Have you guys ever noticed that a lot of Western nations, before they do something, they just somehow announce that they're gonna do it before they actually do it? It's like they've gotten so comfortable with the amount of power they wield around the world, the influence they have, how they're used to just crushing other people, that in their own arrogance, they announce their own attacks before they attack them. That's like someone saying, "Hey, I'm about to punch you in the face," while they're coming at you to punch you in the face. What are you gonna do? You're gonna dodge that because it's like, yeah, I saw it coming, right? That's what a lot of Western countries do. Ukrainian, we're gonna mount the greatest greatest offensive in Hershon that y'all are ever gonna see. We're gonna go right into Russia. We're gonna break down everything, right? Telling the whole world your plans. Why? Because we got comfortable and arrogant in our own power that we wield. You look at the Russians. On the Russians' case, it's different. We're still trying to figure out when the next big Russian offensive is coming. You guys realize that? Like every move the Russians have made thus far, we've been guessing. We don't really know because they keep it under lock and key. For some reason, we're the only nation that advertises when we're about to fight you. Like it just doesn't make any sense. So don't get it twisted, people. We've been advertising the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline long before this war ever happened. So any of you Americans or westernized civilians listening to this right now and saying, "No, Duke, you're wrong. Russia definitely has something to do with this," you're crazy. You don't live in the real world, and you're definitely not paying attention because your own country and its allies are seeking to destroy you. That's just what it is. And the reason why they don't care about you is because these European countries are the vassal states of the United States Empire. You understand that? We are the modern day Rome, okay? We're towards the end of our empire date because the expiration date is coming up pretty soon here, all right? And we can feel it, and other countries can feel it. The expiration date is coming up, and it's coming fast, all right? We are modern day Rome. That's what we are right now, and it's coming to an end. So every other country that is an ally of us, they're not meant for you because we control them. It's the new age colonialism, baby. That's how the shit works. Welcome to the new era. How you doing? Take a seat. Grab a drink. We own you. That's how this works. So if you're wondering why Olaf Scholz isn't going to do anything, Olaf Scholz can't do anything because he's our bitch. Oh, for reference, I live in the U.S., by the way, for reference point. You're looking at Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron, come help us. French, all right? Come help us. We're suffering here. He can't help you because he's under our thumb. A lot of these European countries, they work for us, all right? And I'm over here saying us, U.S. government, but even our government don't work for us, okay? So we, the people, are in the same boat as you people, okay? We're in the same boat as you. It's just that our government is running this whole situation where they don't care about anybody, and that's why when people ask, when we're at the end of the empire, this is the signs you need to be looking for. They're trying to keep you distracted with the Colosseums and the milk and the bread and the honey, right? So you don't pay attention to what's really going on. But the truth is, we're falling apart. And every decision that we're making to try to mitigate this destruction is further leading to our annihilation. That's what we're doing. So let's get back to this article here. I'm sorry I went off on that tangent. I just had to do it. But that right there is a very important paragraph, okay? Biden's decision to sabotage the pipelines came after more than 9 months of highly secret back and forth debate inside Washington's national security community about how to best achieve that goal. For much of that time, the issue was not whether to do the mission, but how to get it done with no overt clue as to who was responsible. There was a vital bureaucratic reason for relying on the graduates of the Center Hardcore Diving School in Panama City. The divers were Navy only and not members of America's Special Operations Command, whose covert operations must be reported to Congress and briefed in advance to the Senate and House leadership. The so-called Gang of Eight, the Biden administration was doing everything possible to avoid leaks as the planning took place late 2021 and into the first months of 2022. This is insane. And you see why the mainstream media tried to get this article taken down. They want this article gone because it's an embarrassment. What this shows is, hey, we're willing to destroy our own allies to make sure they don't depend on our enemies. We'll take away what's good for your sovereign nation for the self-interest of ours. And you want to tell me that years down the road when people read history books, because y'all, some of these new age politicians, they're so desperate to make it in the history books. It's just sad, right? When history looks back on this day, they'll look at how sick, degraded our empire is to just blatantly lie to the people. But not only that, history is going to look back on the people and say, how crazy were we in the world where information was abundant to completely miss this shit? To miss the fact that this was happening and we didn't say anything about it. This era in history would go down to be how the greatest westernized propaganda machine, how it basically convinced the rest of the westernized world to support Nazis. Yeah, that's what history is going to look back at this now. Because you don't think that majority of Ukrainian forces weren't Nazis? Go look at the atrocities they committed, not only to the people in the Donbass and Luhansk regions, but the people they treat in their own homes, their fellow Ukrainians. These Azov guys are bad news. Now, these Azov battalion became an Azov brigade, and they're driving German tanks to fight Russians in Ukraine. If you don't tell me this isn't World War II, I'll agree with you. But I'll tell you this, history definitely rhymes. It's rhyming right now. So the country that took down fascism and Nazis are now the same ones that are supporting fascists and Nazis. This is going to be an odd time in history. And it's just crazy how like a lot of people who, some of them who are educated, college educated, are completely just missing the point. Like, you guys are useful tools, and it's sad. Let's continue. From its earliest days, Nordstream 1 was seen by Washington as an anti-Russian NATO partner. Oh, wait, did I read this? Actually, no, I didn't read this paragraph. From the earliest days, Nordstream 1 was seen by Washington and its anti-Russian NATO partners as a threat to Western dominance. The holding company behind it, Nordstream AG, was incorporated in Switzerland in 2005. The partnership with the Gazprom, a publicly traded Russian company producing enormous profits for the shareholders, which is dominated by oligarchs known to be the thrall of Putin. Gazprom controlled 51% of the company, with 4 European energy firms, 1 in France, 1 in the Netherlands, and 2 in Germany. So Germany stand a lot to lose from this pipeline destruction. Sharing the remaining 45% of the stock and having a right to control the downstream sales of the inexpensive natural gas to local distributors in Germany and Western Europe. Gazprom profits were shared with the Russian government, and state and gas oil revenues were estimated in some years to amount to as much as 45% of Russia's annual budget. When you read this, you start to understand why the collective West, and particularly the United States, were so confident that their sanctions was going to work in terms of destroying the Russian government, right? Because we thought that because the Russian sales of gas amounts for almost 45% of their budget, well, guess what? If we permanently took out that pipeline, we're accomplishing 2 things. We're not only helping to enhance the current sanctions that are already levied against Russia to further put pressure on their economies, but what we're also going to do is we're going to decouple Europe, our allies that depend on this cheap natural gas. We're going to decouple them from Russia, further trying to isolate them from the rest of the West. That's what the whole plan was. But it backfired in a massive way, right? And if you're even looking at this, the U.S. is even admitting that this is what had to be done, right? Because it is the threat to Western dominance. And therein lies the real truth. The only reason why we're invested in any place around the world is because we want to hold on to our dominance. And remember what I told you, we're the modern day Rome and we're falling apart. We don't even know it. But this is huge news. Our allies right now should be looking at this with a side eye. America's political fears were real when Putin would now have additional and much needed major source of income. And Germany and the rest of Western Europe would become addicted to the low-cost natural gas supplied by Russia, while diminishing Europeans' reliance on America. In fact, that's exactly what happened, which is true. Which is funny when you look at some of these news articles and some of these so-called journalists coming out and saying, well, no, the Russia definitely stand the most to gain from destroying Nord Stream. And you read this crap, it's like, obviously we knew who stand a lot to lose if Nord Stream 2 was a thing and Nord Stream 1 was still a thing. The U.S. would lose because most Americans don't even know that we have a shit ton of oil here. All right. We're the ones selling the liquefied natural gas. Remember back in the day with fracking? Y'all remember fracking, how big that was with Hillary Clinton, when she was going around and she was telling everybody around the world, y'all should do fracking, and you should do fracking, and you should do fracking, and everybody should do fracking. Fracking is great. Well, welcome. This is what we're talking about, right? These guys, it's all connected. So the U.S. produces a lot of gas. We have a lot of gas. So the fact that all this shit is going on in Russia, it's not going to affect us because we have the large reserve of oil and we have the means to refine our own gas, which is crazy to me, right? So the U.S. stands the most to gain and almost really nothing to lose. And the people who really have a lot to lose is the European countries that depend overwhelmingly on cheap gas. Well, guess what? Now that we permanently severed your bond, unclipped you from the umbilical cord of the Russians, now you're buying more expensive gas from us. It's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. That's exactly what this is. And a lot of these Western countries are just going along with it. No one's questioning the big boss. No one's throwing up objections out there. We're just accepting the fact that the biggest ally in the world not only did their job to destroy our economy, destroy our means of making more money and keeping our people warm, because realistically, the making more money part, that gas that came into Europe from Russia, the Europeans had the right to sell that gas to other countries. So it's like taking a cut of a cut and then selling it off. They were making money. They were basically double dipping. They got cheap gas and then they can sell it at a markup to other countries. Oh, by the way, guess what India is doing? Guess what China is doing, right? Because of these ridiculous sanctions and caps. Well, India is like, well, how about we just buy these cheap oils from Russia? Because, I mean, no one else in the West is going to be buying it, right? But the West are going to be stuck with expensive gas. So how about we just buy these cheap gas and just resell it to them for a more expensive price? And where are they going to go? What are they going to do, huh? And that's what's happening. So you see the scheme for what it is. And y'all want to sit there and tell me that the United States doesn't stand to gain from the pipeline exploding. You're still not in reality yet. Y'all need to wake up, okay? Nord Stream 1 was dangerous enough in the view of NATO and Washington, but Nord Stream 2, whose construction was completed in September of 2021, would, if be approved by the German regulators, double the amount of cheap gas that would be available to Germany and Western Europe. The second pipeline also would provide enough gas for more than 50% of Germany's annual compensation. Tensions were constantly escalating between Russia and NATO, backed by the aggressive foreign policy of the Biden administration. So don't get it twisted. Y'all coming at me, don't say nothing, because this is Biden war. Biden administration led this. But think about this, right? Think about what we just read here about the how dangerous Nord Stream 2 pipeline was to United States and NATO-backed countries, right? It's not just the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that they were worried about. You want to understand this. What the United States were more worried about was Germany getting too close to the Russians. That's all we were worried about. Because if the Germans, all right, if they get too close to the Russians, well, that definitely exposes our position in Europe. Because guess what? Olaf Scholz is no longer our puppet. He's going to be Putin's puppet. And Germany is going to be Russia's vassal state instead of the vassal state of the United States. And we can't have that. If Nord Stream Pipeline 2 goes in, right? Well, guess what? They have double the cheap gas they're getting from Russia. That means that they're going to be economically tied more on a permanent basis if anything else. Right? So we have to nip it in the butt right now because if Germany falls, so goes the rest of Europe. Except for maybe Poland. Right? Because Poland, they're going crazy right now. That was the mindset of your government, United States government. If Germany falls to the Russians, so goes the rest of Europe. That's the first line that's going to break, and the rest of Europe is going to fall because you can't compete with cheap gas. That's what was so dangerous about Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, right? So, opposition to Nord Stream 2 flared on the eve of the Biden inauguration in January 2021. Biden wasn't even elected yet. This shows you how much they were still planning. Trump was still technically president up until inauguration, and they were planning the destruction of Ukraine. You understand that, right? You understand that if another president was in power, we may not have gotten this war. So those you liberals out there that voted for Biden and said that Biden was a better choice, we wouldn't have had the war because they were planning this. This plan had to go into fruition. Think about this. Why do you think they were so mad when Hillary lost? Because if Hillary won, this war would have happened much sooner because they had this shit planned up already. You want to tell me days up until Biden got elected, they just drummed up this plan to blow up the pipelines? No. It's been in planning since Obama was in. I'm sure Obama knows something about this. They've been planning this shit. They knew Hillary was going to be the girl or the woman to kick everything off. But it was a big upset when she lost because that means the global agenda had to be derailed. And then when they finally got their guy in, which is Biden, plan commenced business as usual. This was a big contention and big arguing point before Biden became president. And as soon as he became president, Biden got his marching papers from the deep state. Hey, go start a war, old man. Go start a war right now. And that's exactly what we're dealing with. The consequences of old men and women. Would Biden stand up to the Germans? Blinken said yes, but added that he had not discussed the specifics of the incoming president's views. I know his strong conviction that is a bad idea, the Nord Stream 2, he said. I know he would have us use every persuasive tool that we had to convince our friends and partners, including Germany, to not move forward with it. Why do you think America was so worried about the Germans? Other than what I just explained in the last paragraph of 45% of potentially 45% of Russia's income coming from the sales to Germany, crude oil sales to Germany. Why do you think the United States was so scared of Germany going towards the NATO's? Because if you read what Blinken is saying, Tony Blinken being the current Secretary of State, if you look what he's saying that, listen, I know Biden. I don't know what his views are. That's cap. He's an empty shell. He doesn't have views. Okay. You guys tell Biden what to think. Okay. But they said he will have us use every persuasive tool that we have to convince our friends and partners, including Germany. Now, when they say friends and partners, they mean the rest of Europe that is already a vassal state of our empire. Okay. These are vassal states. They don't matter. But the Germans, well, the Germans are an interesting bunch because we don't really know what the Germans are thinking. I mean, realistically, they are on our side, but I mean, look how much benefit they're getting from Russia. So if we go ahead with this plan and Germany isn't on board, there might be a problem because we might accidentally push Germany over to the Russians. So that was a big problem. So we really have to convince Germany to be on our side on this one. Angela Merkel, that's where she comes into play. Now she's no longer there. We got Olaf Scholz, who's a pushover, but he's a guy that the Western countries can't control. They can, and they do control Olaf Scholz. But Germany was that last block in this whole shebang where we said if we don't convince them that us destroying their economy is for their own good, we might have a problem. And guess what? We got our guy Olaf Scholz in there, and now we got the destruction of the pipelines. We got tanks rolling in Ukraine. It is just chaos and pandemonium all over the streets. So if you guys want to sit there and tell me that this stuff isn't being planned, that your lives and how much you're going to suffer isn't being planned out right now by people you don't even know, sitting in dark rooms, you're still not living in the real world. This is what the real Matrix is all about. This is what it's all about. Not realizing that, oh my goodness, so women are like crazy. No. The real Matrix, like all that Andrew Tate stuff, right? The real Matrix is realizing that history is determined by the victors. And the victors are empires and interest groups that have existed long before you and I have been here. And they've had a long plan that they're now putting in motion. I believe the pandemic was part of it. I believe this war is part of it. And I believe certain disasters that we've experienced and other countries have experienced are also part of the plan. See, it's not the full government that's involved with this nonsense, but specialized interest groups that understand long-term planning and social engineering. That's how this stuff works. Wake up and get hip to the program, people. We'll read a little bit more. There were immediate consequences. Senate Republicans led by Ted Cruz announced an immediate blockade of all Biden's foreign policies nominees and delayed passage of annual defense bill for months, deep into the fall. Politico later depicted Biden's turnabout on the second Russian pipeline as one decision, arguably more than the chaotic military withdrawal from Afghanistan that has imperiled Biden's agenda. No, it actually furthered Biden's agenda because the one of the U.S. biggest lies is to convince you that we have the ability to fight the war on two fronts with near peer competitors. That's not true. Okay, we don't even have the capacity to fight a war on two fronts with a near peer competitor and a pushover foe. Right? We don't know that. We had to pull out of Afghanistan because we needed to save troops and potential equipment if the Ukraine debacle fails. That's the only reason why. We don't have the ability to fight on two fronts. And even now that Ukraine is so under the supply, they're always coming to us for weapons, military supplies, all these different things. And we're over here struggling to provide that. It just shows you we're not strong here in the West. We like you to believe that, right? What is the greatest lie that the devil ever told? To convince you that the world that he doesn't exist, right? No, that's cap. That's not the truth. The biggest lie that the devil ever told is to convince you that he is God. He can do anything. He can be like God. He can be just like God. You can come to him. Matter of fact, you should worship him. That's the biggest lie. Not the fact to convince you that the devil doesn't exist. No, because we understand that the world is the devil's playground. The earth is the devil's playground. It's kind of like that. What is the biggest lie the United States has ever told? It's to convince you that they can do anything. That's how we push these countries and march these young men into their deaths and wars. Because we convince them that we'll come out and we'll back you. Oh, we can do this. We can do that. We're the United States. We can do anything. That's the power of Western propaganda. The truth is, we can't do everything. We can't fight Afghanistan and also go ahead and take on the Russians. We've been in Afghanistan for 20 years. And even those people fighting Afghanistan don't even know what the hell they're doing down there. We didn't. All that shit started way back from the Bush days, and we still don't know what we're doing. We got generations of soldiers fighting right now. We still don't know what we're doing. So we had to pull out. If we didn't pull out, Afghanistan would have been the death of the U.S. empire, because it's been the death of so many more empires before ours. So the biggest lie United States is trying to convince the rest of the world to believe is that we can fight a war and we can do anything and protect anyone and be everywhere. But that's not true. We had to pull out of Afghanistan because we needed to save our resources for Ukraine. And once this Ukraine debacle is concluded, we're going to pull out of that, right? And watch. You'll see some of these Western media sources are going to say, hey, they're either going to stop covering this Ukrainian thing, war, or they're going to start prepping their readers for the biggest loss that Ukrainians are going to face. That's what they're going to do. But ultimately, they're going to distance themselves from this, wash their hands like this shit never existed, and move on to the next war. We got the Air Force general coming out and saying there's war going to be with China with 2025. They're prepping for that. We're letting you know what we're going to do. You notice that, right? Western countries are the only countries that announce their moves before they make it. We're the only ones that announce all of our plans before we make it, before we do it, right? Hey, China, get ready for a fight. I'm going to fight you in about 2 years, all right? So go get ready. Like, who the fuck does that? Like, but we're so arrogant and we're so used to being on top, and we've bought into our own bullshit that we can do anything. We're basically God, right? That we announce our shit expecting that our enemies can't use that to fuck us up. That's the mindset we have, because we got so lazy and deluded in our own power and our own, Jesus, it's just so disgusting looking at what the country has turned out today. It's very sick to see. Really is. And how the people are just blindly following. It's very sickening, but it's true. We're gonna read a little bit more, and then we'll conclude, right? But this one says, let's go into the planning real quick. And that's Victoria Nuland, by the way, guys. This is Victoria Nuland. This is Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State. And this is Jake Sullivan. All right, so these are the biggest architects right now of the Ukrainian conflict. All right, it's not the Russians, it's these guys. These guys have been planning this crap before Biden got into power, okay? So in December of 2021, 2 months before the first Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine, Jake Sullivan's convened a meeting of newly formed task force, men and women from the Joint Chief of Staff, the CIA, and the State and Treasury Departments, and asked for recommendations about how to respond to Putin's impending invasion. It would be the first of a series of top secret meetings in a secure room on a top floor of the old executive building adjacent to the White House that was also the home of the President's Foreign Intelligence Advisory Board, the PFIAB. There was the usual back and forth chatter and eventually led to a crucial preliminary question. Would the recommendation forwarded by the group to the president be reversible, such as another layer of sanctions, currency restrictions, or irreversible, that is, kinetic actions, which could not be undone, right? So what they're talking about here is, all right, what if we throw in another layer of sanctions, right? Currency restrictions, or irreversible kinetic actions which could not be undone. Well, we know they did another round of sanctions when the war first broke out, so that's nothing new, right? We knew they did a bunch of currency restrictions on Russia with the whole SWIFT situation, kicking Russia off of SWIFT. If you guys know what SWIFT is, it was pretty much the international banking transaction system the westernized governments used, right? So we kicked the Russia out of that, basically effectively cutting them off from Western financial systems. That's what we did. That was the whole plan. And on top of that, the foreign investment, which was it $350 billion that the Russians had in Western bank accounts, we froze them all too. And actually, there's even talks of giving that money to Ukraine. But I don't think they're going to do it. What I think they're going to do is pocket that money amongst the politicians and people who are being paid in that inside group. That's where that $350 billion of Russian money is going to go to. And I bet you if I was the Russians, I'd be pissed. Imagine investing in the country, and just because war broke out with you and another nation that they started, right? The rest of the world punishes you by keeping or stealing your money. I mean, why are we surprised? The government does it to every U.S. citizen out here, right? It's called civil asset forfeiture. All right, where the U.S. government can seize money of any U.S. citizen. So if they're going to, if the U.S. government is willing to do this to U.S. citizens, of course they're going to do it to other nations. There's no respect. There's no values here. Okay. So we did the currency restrictions, but what do they mean by kinetic actions? Well, we know kinetic means some kind of physical energy, some kind of force, right? But what do you mean kinetic actions that cannot be undone? So what type of physical force of energy are you looking to impose on Russia that may have irreparable damage, that may cause irreparable damage? And when you start thinking about the stuff that these guys are announcing out there, it starts to make a lot of sense, doesn't it? Over the next several meetings, the participants debated options for an attack. The Navy proposed using a newly commissioned submarine to assault the pipeline directly. The Air Force discussed dropping bombs with delayed fuses that could be set off remotely. The CIA argued that whatsoever was done, it would have to be covert. Everyone involved understood the stakes. This is not kiddie stuff, the sources said. If the attack were traceable to the United States, it's an act of war. A U.S. official who was part of this plot even admits that, hey, if word got out that we sat here in this room, the CIA, other alphabet organization spooks came together and planned an attack on an ally, they would view it as an act of war. If we realize that, what do you think that the citizens of Germany are going to realize years down the road after they read the history books? They're going to say, hey, this is an act of war. I mean, imagine if another country had this type of plan against us. It'd be an act of war, wouldn't it? We would be in that country ready to invade, ready to blow shit up right now. Because we're doing it, it's okay. Like, I want you guys to really, really, really think about what is going on here. And when you're thinking about that, when you're thinking about how a group of special interest groups, intelligence operating officers, and members of highly specialized academies like the diving and bombing crews, right? If they're willing to come together in a dimly lit dark room and discuss the fate of the other nations allied with them, now would it be so hard to believe that a group of government spooks and special interest groups can also convene in the same room to discuss the murder of a sitting U.S. president? I'm talking about Kennedy, y'all. Let that sink in for just 1 second. We're showing you right now that we can plot to take out vital economic infrastructures of our allies. Call it an act of war. And you don't think it's that hard to see how these same specialized groups, alphabet intelligence agencies, you don't see how they can come together and plan the assassination of a U.S. president who spoke out against the dangers of the military-industrial complex? You want to tell me they don't have the power to convene in a dark room and do that? Wake up. You've been sleeping for too long. The world is capable of anything. Your country, your government is capable of doing anything, and they will do anything, especially when their interest groups align. More than ever now, we need to start waking up and understanding how the game is played. Because at the end of the day, it's not the future of these old bags that are plotting your life right now. It's your life that's going to be able to deal with the mess that they've made. You're going to deal with the inflation. You're going to deal with the deaths. You're going to deal with the losses. You're going to be stuck with the bill while these rich fat cats who plan the murder of presidents, treason, an act of war on our own allies, while we're sitting there doing all of this crap. I need y'all to really, really pay attention, because you don't think that what's going on in China with the censorship and, social credit and all that stuff is coming here. You're wrong. They got a one-party government. We got a one-party government. We're just good at convincing you that you have more options than you do. It's the greatest lie that the world's ever told. At least we did, because we, the U.S., we think we're the world. And anyone that comes in to try to challenge that, they got to get knocked down a few pegs. And that's what we're seeing right now. So, guys, I don't want this to be a super long stream. I just want to go ahead and talk about this very, very important news that the media is not talking about. All right. And also add my own flair to it. Right now, am I anywhere speculating that the United States government was responsible for the murder of a sitting U.S. president? I'm not insinuating that. I'm not making that claim. I'm just saying that anything is possible, especially seeing what we're seeing here today of what special government intelligence groups that are not beholden to the people are capable of doing in closed rooms when the American people aren't watching. Have a good one. Hit the like and subscribe button. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.